Hey everyone, it's time for episode 5 of this little story creator app. So last time we added this player class where we had some attributes that the player had and we updated them. And this time we're going to add another class, and the class is going to be for scenes. So here's the scene. You find yourself in a forest. What do? There's some options, and then there's some input that you have. And so basically what we want to do is make it so that we can create a long branching story without it taking up a massive amount of the page, so that we can have it sort of condensed into sets of variables instead of it just being in long form. All right, so underneath, make a new class, public class, and then we'll call it scene, I guess. That seems to be what we should probably call it. And then we need another class, public class, and then option, because you're going to have options to select from, and then public class. And this will probably be the action that it takes based on that option, which I'm thinking that probably would be better as a method. We don't need to make that a class. So inside the scene, we're going to have a list of options. Now, since this is sort of a tutorial or set of tutorials aimed at newer people who are just getting into programming, a list is essentially a group of objects that are in sort of a specific order. So you can think of it as being just like a grocery list where there's a bunch of different values, except that in a list they're all of the same type. So every single object in this list will be an option. You can make it more ambiguous than that, but that's what we're going to do for now. So options equals new and then the scene is going to have string text. We want lowercase string and make it public. And we'll call it headline text. This text is going to be the part that introduce you to the scene. So you find yourself in a forest, what do? That sort of thing. So headline text equals, and then we'll just do string.empty. Actually, can I? Yeah, I think so. Okay, this list also needs to be public because you're going to be accessing it. Okay, and then you need a public void. This is going to be a method, and this is going to be the thing that goes through the options, lays them out, and then sort of interprets it. So I suppose that probably those things should be separate. So this would be display options. And then the next one, which would be the action, is public, and then scene, and then update player. And then essentially what this does is this will return the next scene. So we'll need a public. This technically wouldn't need to be public since we could, but it'll be easier. It'll be easier. So public scene, next scene. And then we'll just do get and set. Well, and then what we'll say is if, actually we can just return next scene, and then we'll have another method that we'll update the player with. So we'll need player object in here. And what this is essentially, this is a value that gets added to, well, it's a parameter. So I guess you could say it gets added to this set of executing code here, and it makes it accessible so that inside of this function I can call actions that happen on the player without having to do some crazy workaround by sharing global variables or some bad idea like that. So at the moment it'll just be a player object right now. And what we'll do here is we'll say, all right, we need to display the options. So we'll say for each option, opt in options. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that for every single option we add to this option list, it will execute on that option by calling it opt, and then we can access each one of these variables as opt. So what we'll do here is we'll say opt dot, and then we need to add to the class option string public string text, which is the option text. And then we also need to add the expected answer or the potential answer text. So we'll do public list answers. We'll do null for now. So we'll say opt dot text. Let's see, console dot write line pt.text. Okay. Now what this is going to do is it's going to handle this part, the console to write line for each one of these options. And we'll also want some dividing lines. So when we write out the option, we will want a dividing line above it, dividing line below. And so what this means is that now that we have a scene class and we want to use this method, which is not part of the scene class, we will need to change where this method is, which class this method is a part of. So we'll just Control X, and then inside of this scene class, we're going to go ahead and add this in. Okay. And then in here, we'll say the length is int, and that will say how long the lines will be. Now, you may notice that there's little red lines underneath these because now not part of this class, so it's not accessible there. However, this is a static class, or static method, sorry, not class, method, inside of the scene class. So all we have to do here is say scene dot line. And so what this does is it says, look inside the scene class with this function. And bam, there's a line. However, we do not need the lines here anymore because these lines have to do with displaying this text and displaying this text, which is the whole point of the scene. So we will actually be removing these eventually. I'm not going to do it quite yet because I don't want to get ahead of myself. All right. So the first part of the scene, we display options. But before we display all those options, we do need to put down in between the line, I believe, well, let's see if we put a line in between the text and the options. I think we did. Yes, here's the text, here's a line, then there's options. So we'll go ahead and grab another line and just Control copy it, put it in here, And then in between it, we'll want headline text to be WriteLine. So we'll grab console.WriteLine, headline text, and put it right in there. Now what happens is we have it displaying all of our information and our options. However, we do not have it asking us what to do about it. So this part where it says your answer needs to get added in. So in order to do that, what we'll want to do is have inside the update player, we'll say write your answer. And what this does, and then we have a string answer equals console.readLine. All right. So now we get the answer here. And inside of here, well, I won't do that yet. We'll wait for a moment. Okay. Because this will probably come, yeah, this will happen afterwards. Yeah. So in update player, we have this question that happens, and you answer it. And then it needs to know what to do with your answer. So inside display options, or inside options rather, we have this answers list. What we want to know is whether or not the thing that we typed in is inside of that answers list. So what we'll say is if, then we'll do, we need to get for each option again. So what we do is we do for each option. Instead of writing them out, we'll check them. We'll check to see if the answers work. So if opt.contains, oops, I shouldn't say that. What we need to do is say if opt.answers.contains, and then the item will be answer. And we want to do .to lower again so that we know that it's all lowercase. That way it's consistent. Then we say, all right, oops, 1 second. I missed, yes, I missed the end of the if statement there. And say, all right, well, if it contains it, then we have found the one, the correct one, to run. And then what we say is opt dot, let's see. Oh, right. Update player for this scene. It needs to have something that tells me what action to take based on what option I get. So there needs to be a list of players that inform by what amount that player will be transformed. So now we could do something where we have another class that has an option and a player in it. But I feel like, actually, you know what? There's a really easy way to do this. I just realized. So I'm going to do that instead. Is if we put a public player effect list player public player list player effects. All right. So the player effects are going to correspond with the answers. So what we could do here is say public class effect, oops, not that yet, and then put a player and then that would probably be a public, so it's accessible. And then inside here we have a public string answer. And what this would do, let's see if we can do this. What this would do is, instead of having a list here, we'd have list effects, and equals null for now because we're not going to assign value to it yet. Okay. So then what happens is, instead of saying option, or we will say option, but inside of option we will have option dot effects dot okay, so effect, and then in, and we need another for each statement on top of this, and then say option opt in player, let's see, options. And then what this will do is, for every single option, it'll go through each effect. And here we say effect in opt.effects. There you go. And then what happens is we say eft dot answer. Oh, no, we say opt dot wait. Since we're going through each of them, we don't have to do the contains because it's not one giant list. What we have to do is say eft.answer.contains answer.toLower. Okay, so what's happening here is we are checking the effect, which is this set of a player value and an answer value. The player value is supposed to represent by what values does the player change. The answer is supposed to say on what answer does that effect get executed. So we go through all of the options, and for every option that we go through through all the effects on that option. And if this effect matches, then we are going to alter the player by the amount the effect indicates. So we'd say player.experience plus equals eft.player.experience, and then we say player.hp or health plus equals eft.player.health, say player dot well, we don't really need to update the name, but we'll do it anyway so that we can give you titles later. eft.player.name. Okay, and then afterwards we do something called break. Break means stop looping. So break whatever action's happening. So for instance, this is a loop. It's looping over every single effect in this option. Once it finds something that fits, it no longer needs to keep searching because we found the answer to it. So we'll just break and we'll save ourselves a little bit of processing power. All right. Okay. Now, essentially what happens is this will update the player automatically for whatever scene we create. Now I expect to find a few bugs in here that we'll have to change, like where these lines are, whether or not it puts it out or whatever properly. And I'm gonna show you what it's like to create essentially a scene. So we go scene, we'll just say end scene for new scene, or we could say first scene equals new scene. Okay. So what the new keyword does is essentially says allocate resources necessary for first scene. Okay. Now we go first scene. Oops. it would be headline text equals, and then what we'll do is we'll say, you find yourself in a forest, what do you do? Okay. Then we say first scene dot options equals new list of options. And then we can say option 1 equals new option. And what we can also do in here is, because there's no constructor inside of option, so you can see there's no constructor here, and I'll explain what a constructor is. Essentially, it's what code is executed when you call this new player or new scene. There'd be a constructor for scene, there'd be a constructor for player. When you call that, the constructor would be called, and all the code inside that constructor would run. And that constructor would look like this, public option. And then it would just be like this. And so what this means is you notice that the difference between this and a function is there's no type assigned, no type at all. So it's just public option. And then you could write code in here like console.write, and it would do whatever you tell it to do in that. When that constructor is called, that constructor would be called for option at the time that we say new option here. And we need a semicolon here. But because we don't have a constructor for this class, and we don't for the others as well, what we can actually do is say inside of here equals new option, and we can do this, and we can do assignment inside these brackets. Instead of having to call the new thing and then access the variables, we can just access them directly. And we can say text equals, and then inside here we can say climb a tree, or option 1, climb a tree. Let me see if I can copy this properly so that I don't get extra. Okay. And we do comma because we have another variable in there that needs to be assigned, and that's effects. Effects has to do with, oh, wait a moment. Aha, I found an error that I did. First of all, this actually doesn't need to be a list because it's one text option to one effect, because each option only has one choice, right? So this shouldn't be a list, which means that this actually doesn't need to be a for each. I knew there was something weird about having the for each there. I was confused about it for a second, but I'm like, I think this is correct. What we really need is opt.effects.answer, but it's going to be effect singular because we don't want it to be confusing. So I'm going to change that. And then we go opt.effect, just like that, so that we're referencing that singular variable instead of iterating over a list of variables. Okay, so we fixed that. And what we want to do here is say effect equals new effect. And we can do the same thing again. Inside of here we have a answer, and that is equal to, oh wait, I do not need this semicolon here because we already have it inside of a close thing. Anyways, inside this effect we can say the answer is 1. So if they type 1. Now we will update this, and this is why I initially had done it as a list, is because I realized that there'd be multiple options. Like you could type in option 1, you could type in 1, you could type in climb, you could type in tree, and we'd want it to all run. But for now we're just gonna, I don't want to complicate it and make it convoluted, so it's just going to be one option that you can choose right now. So we'll say it's 1 for now. Okay, And also inside this effect, we have a new player. And then inside a player, we have health. And if you climb a tree, it's negative, I don't know, 2 health or something. And then experience. Now, what is this error it's giving me? Member declaration. Oh, right. I forgot. Player equals. Experience will give you some experience if this happens, 10 experience. And then name equals, and then we can just say space the stupid or the risky. That's better. All right, so let's see whether or not. And now this is getting a bit long, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and do this. I'm gonna add a new line here. I'm gonna add so that they're all in their own sort of line. And then this is gonna also be its own thing, so it's nice and neat. And then we don't have, okay. So here's option 1. And then what we can do is say, first scene, okay, dot options dot add. So we'll add it to the list. Option 1. Now let's add it. So let's see, we can test this out and see if we've done this properly. It's possible we haven't done it properly yet. So we will see. So instead of saying this stuff here, we'll actually go ahead and comment this part out from here to here. And then we'll say scene dot, oops, what did I call it? First scene. First scene dot display options. And then I think it was 70 that we had the length that, but I think I actually have a variable for that. So we just do this. And then first scene dot update player. And then we put in player. And I believe now we gotta cross our fingers to make sure that we didn't make a mistake. Well, we probably did, but we will see. It might work out. What is your name? Brandon. Okay, it says, hello, Brandon. You find yourself in a forest. What do you do? And now there's only one option because we've only added one option. It says climb a tree. And remember, the answer we put in that's acceptable is the 1. So we'll put in a 1 here and hit enter and see what happens. All right, it skipped over the part where stuff happens because we don't have anything letting you know what happened. That's the part we're missing. So we did make a mistake, a very small mistake inside of update player. And that is we do not update, we do not tell them what update happened. So what we need to do is decide what to say when that sort of thing happens. So we'll say public string text equals string.empty. All right, and then here we'll do something that says console.write line, and then we'll say let's see, it wouldn't be player, it'd be OPT for option, and then the effect of that option, and then the text of that option. And then we'll do something which is like a player update, or not an update, but an output of what value. So we'll do public void, and then show stats, and then player oops, is there something? Oh, there we go. Player, and then what we'll do is we'll say, we'll just update stats about the player. So we'll want to grab this console.writeLine. We're going to want to go ahead and put a line. So we'll need length. Well, no, we won't worry about that right now. Okay. So, and then we'll do this, and we'll say writeLine player dot name. And then we're going to copy this 2 more times to get the other stuff. And then we can do dot experience. We can do dot health. And then we'll want to put some text in there so you know what's happening. You say player or name, and then plus. Then we're going to grab this, and then we're going to do experience, or XP, I guess. Or I guess EXP, I don't know, something like that. And then health. Okay. And then we'll say show stats after this stuff happens. Show stats to the player. And we want to make sure that it's the correct player. So we do player, which is this past variable, not the local variable. So do that. And then what we want to add up here, one last thing, is to say inside of here, there is a text and it equals you fall and break your neck. Okay, but we want to copy it because that's a lot faster than typing that all over again. Then you don't have to proofread it twice. You just have to proofread it once. Well, you probably still should, but you know. All right, now we run it again. Oh, a build error. What is this? Oh, we missed something. Not semicolon, it's common inside of these defined options and effects. So when you define the class, there are commas that separate, not semicolons. Because they execute as one line, so no. Okay, random. Okay, we choose option 1. It says you slip and fall and break your neck. Name, Brandon the Risky, because we added the risky on the end. And then experience 10, because you gained 10 experience, and now you're only at 8 HP. So I feel like this is probably a good place to stop the tutorial, because it's gone on a bit farther than, longer than I'd like it to. And we got quite a bit done, so that now we can just add more options to each one and add more scenes. And then we can just cycle through those scenes later with a for each loop. That will, well, actually we don't even need to do that, because what we'll actually be doing is getting the next scene and calling that instead of cycling through them, so that you can go back and forth. So anyways, that's the end of the tutorial. I hope you liked it. Let me know what you think in the comments. This one probably went a little bit longer than expected. But yeah, just give me some feedback, and I'll see you guys next time.